Hello, good evening, and welcome. I'm Simon Bestwick.
And I'm Gemma Files, and this, of course, is No Darkness But
But
Ours. Do
so,
do 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 do.
yep, that is Gemma. There is humming the Simon Boswell's amazing theme from one of the great horror movies of the 1990s, possibly even the great horror movie of the 1990s, perhaps. Certainly,
Candyman also was
in the Mouth of
1990.
Madness as well.
Yeah, that's true.
That's certainly one of, definitely up there. We refer, of course, to Richard Stanley's Dust Devil,
Yes.
which is going to form the basis of another of our series of deep dives into great horror movies. So joining me,
Informative horror movies. I mean, when I saw Dust Devil, I already knew that I was likely to like things that other people didn't like. I found that out when I went to the thing, and there were two other people in it, in the audience with me. I found that out when I came out of I I came out of Angel Heart, and the person behind me was talking to his girlfriend and going, "That was so dumb, so dumb."
you're like, bitch, did you see the same film I did?
Yeah, seriously. It's like, and she's like, "What even happened at the end?" And I'm like, "He went to hell, you moron."
It's amazing how some stuff just goes completely over, people's
Yeah,
heads
but
sometimes. But
but when I came out of Dust Devil, I went, so you can actually do that, and it very much in the same way that when I first read Clive Barker, I went, oh, so you can actually do that. You can actually create your own mythology.
yeah, I mean, one of the things that really struck me about both of Stanley's both of the full features that Stanley can complete. I mean, of course, he's recently come back to the fold and made a film filmed The Color Out of Space with
Yeah,
Nicolas Cage, which was every bit as completely batshit wonderful as you'd expect it to be.
it really
Um,
was.
but for a long time, it looked as if um, his entire sort of
Ooh,
his entire sort of credits as a feature director were going to consist of Hardware and Dust Devil with a few brief hints of what could have been in the Island of Doctor Moreau, his version of the Island of Doctor Moreau. Um,
which was
and,
taken over halfway through, and he did this amazing thing where he was bounced off of his own film,
yeah,
and but all the people who were working on the film were still people he had hired, so particularly in the um, in the makeup department. So he ended up getting made up as a dog man so that
yes,
he could be in almost every almost every crowd scene.
he could be in a sort of big burn down the set at the end of
Yeah, that's right.
But I mean, one thing that struck me both about Hardware and about Dust Devil,
Mm.
as someone who had grown up on a lot of horror movies, a lot of sci-fi horror movies, a lot of demonic horror movies, is that these were films that didn't quite do what you expected them to do. The
Yes.
stories didn't quite develop in the way that you were used to seeing stories like that
Yeah,
develop.
it's very easy to walk into Hardware thinking it's going to be the Terminator.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
And
one of the quotes on the poster did say, Terminator for the 1990s or something, and it's not. There's more going on about it, and because I think one of the things you really notice with Stanley's films is the there's a real there's really real intensity and real of the imagery. It's all kind
yeah,
of a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff going on all at the same time, and certainly at first blush, that can mean that the story doesn't seem you're trying to keep track of it. You're trying to work out where the story is going. You can't. It doesn't seem to have the regular kind of flow or smooth pace of the films you're used to seeing in the genre.
yeah.
Uh, but I mean, I've viewed it twice today now. Uh, I don't know how many times I've seen Dust Devil in total, but the more you watch it, the more it makes the more clearly you can see each time what he was doing.
Both of them have aspects of a tone poem. Both of them have aspects of a music video.
It's just part of
They're
his
driven by music. They're supported by music. Their relationship with the score and the diegetic music
yes.
that are going on inside of the film.
Oh God, the use of Hank Williams' Rambling Man
Oh,
in particular
Jesus Christ.
is just magnificent. That whole scene is just fucking incredible.
Yeah, I mean, and that's also the most attractive that Robert Bennett has ever been, or what's his name?
Robert Burke.
Robert Burke. Now these days known as Robert John Burke, I believe.
That's correct. Yes.
Yes. Yeah, that is the most attractive that Robert John Burke has ever been.
Yes, he's a very. You can really. I mean, you can see he can be absolutely terrifying, but he can also be incredibly charming and attractive.
Yeah, and weirdly funny, which makes sense because the Dust Devil is essentially a trickster figure. The Dust Devil is a shapeshifter. The Dust Devil can blunder into looking ridiculous in the same way that anything that moves between forms can. There's a bit of Bugs Bunny to any trickster figure.
Yes.
And there's a bit of the Coyote from the Coyote and the Roadrunner. Anybody who I always love that moment where he walks up next to a truck that's leaking gasoline everywhere.
He's just standing there.
Yes, lights a smoke, and the two people who are just ripping into each other in I think South African Afrikaans. One of them goes, "Homie Jesus," and just takes off.
Yeah, you're not quite sure exactly what they're yelling at each other, but you can get a general sense of it, and it's all. I don't want to. It's not what. Yeah, one is like Jesus Christ or whatever, and just runs. Goes from like to fuck me, like
gotta go. It's like the other one picks up his kid, runs off as well.
Yeah, I mean, those kind of reactions are inherently funny, despite the situation. It's just the fact that they see him lighting it, and then it cuts to another angle, and you actually see he's about that far away from the guy with like a cigarette in his mouth and a light still going away in his hand, and there's like petrol pouring out everywhere. Yep. It's just, I don't give a shit.
Yeah, I don't care. It's like worst case scenario. I kill this body and I move somewhere else.
Yeah. I mean, how vulnerable he actually is at that point. I mean, we know that in the finals, we know he has to be. His power can only be if he can be tricked into crossing the Kiri stick, it's called.
Yes,
He's rooted in the spot and his power is stripped away, which means he can't. I'm presuming, and yet
in that moment he will be completely human. In that moment he will be frozen. I mean, the thing about the Dust Devil is because he keeps on moving, he's absolutely impervious to harm in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Because he is blown from one place to another, because he moves through space and time almost randomly in a completely chaotic way,
which is something of a torment to him. But as Joe Neiman says, the rituals he's conducting to give him power over the material world are essentially so that he can escape from the material world back into the spirit realm where he originates. And it's interesting just to say, in fact, because compare this to Pender's Fen, because one of the things we noted with Pender's Fen is that this is a film where, rather than the body and the soul, the sexuality, politics, all these elements, they're not. Rather than there being things that are kind of antinomically opposed to one another, actually to penetrate. There's a synthesis. It's a fault.
Yeah, and this thing about okay, so it begins with Joe Niemand, the Sankoma of Bethany. Bethany is a little town in Namibia, which is on the verge of being destroyed, being swept away by dust. There's been a drought for like 9 years, I think.
7 years. And also, we probably mentioned the actual, because it was filmed in 1992, but it's presumably set, I think, a couple of years earlier, because it's against the backdrop of Namibia achieving independence, which happened around 1990. It became independent, and the South African government, which had been maintaining a pretty strong presence there, was
Mhm.
basically pulling his troops and police back.
Yeah,
over
that's
the
right.
border.
So it's a world of extreme militarism. It's
Yeah.
a world where the military and the church are very entangled. It's a
Yes.
world where somebody like our local policeman, um, Mr. Mukarob, um, he's, I think, in this weird position where he's trying to keep the white power structure off of his fellow Namibians.
Yeah.
But as a result, he has become ingested by it. And
He's in that awkward position of, I'd hesitate to call him an Uncle Tom figure, although I suspect.
I really don't think so, because yeah, Ben Mukarob is doing his level fucking best to not be that.
Yeah. At the same time, he has effectively, he's essentially he's helped fight in the fighting the sort of the white man's wars against presumably other independence movements. And
He's lost his wife. He's lost his son.
his son was actually killed in one of those wars, and his wife left him as a result.
Yeah.
And
this is all because of your pride.
Yes, as a ghost, as she says to him, and all he's got left of her is a tape of whale music that she left behind, whale songs, which he's constantly playing in the middle of the desert.
In the middle of the desert, yes, whale songs in the middle of the desert.
It's a recurring thing actually, because it's something that one of the other characters in it, Wendy Robinson, she's kind of like got this drive to try and get to the sea, or so at least that's what she thinks, and at the same time he's got this kind of he's his what he yearns for is represented in the whale song. Although anyway, it's set in, that is the setting of it, and then we have the Dust Devil played by Robert John Burke.
So Joe Niemand, the local Sankoma, which is a shaman, a warlock, a magician. Hard to say black or white. I think in that type of magic, what we're thinking of is that there's power. There's power. And, it depends where the power comes from, how you channel it, and what you produce with it. So Joe is sort of masquerading as the guy who runs the local movie theater, which is, of course, a drive-in movie theater. But he is very obviously an actual magician with actual magical power. And as we begin, he is telling the story of Supwa. Supwa, the desert wind, who back in the first times, in the time of the red light, he was a man who yearned to fly. So he grew wings and flew by mistake.
Yeah, by mischance.
By mischance. Grew wings and flew. And so the Dust Devil is a person, well, not a person, but the Dust Devil is a creature that is always in motion between matter and spirit. And when he's embodied, he wants to get back to the spirit. And when he's spirit, he wants to get back in a body. And Joe Neiman talks about how Supwa because he was once a man, he is vulnerable to the passions of a man.
Yeah.
And sometimes he will throw himself to the ground
like a child
having a tantrum. And thus he is the Dust Devil, and a Dust Devil is one of those violent winds that blows from nowhere.
Yes.
And so, his very being is chaotic. His very being is, can cause nothing but harm. And on some level, I think he knows it.
Yeah.
And I say he, but as we see, the Dust Devil can in fact be embodied in any kind of body.
Yeah, he says at one point he'd give his life just for a quiet corner of the earth.
Yeah, but is that true? It's hard to tell. I
It's
mean, the
hard.
point is that he wanted something impossible, and he
Yeah,
got it. And he is, in a lot of ways, I think, an embodiment of the human inability to be satisfied with anything. The worst type of the human hunger. The hunger that is, the hunger that is for sex, the hunger that is for murder, the hunger that is for power,
yeah.
the hunger that is for destruction.
And he's basically a hitchhiker, and he looks very much like a figure out of a western. The Stetson hat, the long dusty coat, even
Yeah.
even notice the sideburns give him a kind of an old world kind of look.
Yeah,
And
I often think that he might have gotten into that body around the time of maybe not the Boer War, but on the other hand, the hat looks a little bit Boer War-ish,
yeah, I mean,
or the First World War because he has a trench knife.
true. I mean there's a lot of it, it's. I mean, just to quickly cover, just to quickly summarize, it's the start of the show. He's basically a hitchhiker. People pick him up, and
Yeah.
he kills them and dismembers them in kind of ritualistic, some form of ritualistic magic.
And often he will with Sachi, the woman that he picks up
Yeah,
right at the beginning. We see that he uses the juices of her body and her blood.
yeah.
He combines them with very, very old things, minerals, and types of
Iron oxide, hematite, kaolin
yes.
was mentioned.
Yeah, exactly. And in the ways that, for example, people would have made pictographs
Exactly, yeah.
in almost pre-human times,
And one thing you
prehistory,
notice
definitely.
is he will take a photo. He takes there's an old Polaroid camera with which he takes a photograph of whoever he intends to kill. And the camera, the scene goes all kind of negative, and it's kind of, I suppose, harking back to that idea that when you take somebody's picture, you
take their soul, you take their life,
soul.
you freeze them in a moment.
Yes.
That they can't get out of, and they are innately vulnerable to you. Also, Joe Neiman says that he attracts the lost. He attracts people who want to die. He attracts people who are in an innately vulnerable position because they're on the verge of giving their souls away, essentially.
Yeah,
And
people who have no faith, they have nothing to really support them, and that's very. I mean, it's very telling. For instance, with
Wendy
Robinson, who is a South who's from Pretoria. She's married to a guy who owns a sports shop and wears horrendous shell suits, which is probably a good reason for leaving him to begin with.
Well, he's also ridiculously jealous
and abusive. He hits her.
Ex-military. He probably has all sorts of stuff going on that we don't know about.
He did have to do compulsory military service for a period, which I think was common and was pretty much the way things went in South Africa at the time.
But Mark Robinson has like a real sort of sense of what it is to be a man, and all of those things are toxic.
Yes, and he also has this increasingly delusional certainty that he and Wendy are, still stand some sort of a chance and will get back together, which is
and Wendy's like, no.
Yeah, I mean, that's the last sort of scene is kind of like, that's possibly why she doesn't shoot him, because by this point she is the dust done. It's like, no, he's still got something left, even if it's a completely delusional and insane thing. Anyway, Wendy Robinson sort of leaving her husband.
See him again, I'm sure. He'll come drifting back towards me.
Finds herself heading into across the border into Namibia in the general direction of the sea, but she's converging on Bethany. The implication being she's being drawn there by the dust devil. Similarly, Ben Mukora, which is played by the wonderfully underrated Zakes Mockay, who was a truly evil bastard in The Serpent and the Rainbow, who is investigating the ritual murder of one woman, and then finds, of course, there are more and more of these turning up. And so that they are both in their different ways converging on the Dust Devil as he remains in constant motion, and Ben has to consult with Joe Niemand, who's the only person who might understand what the hell these rituals are supposed to serve. And
yeah, but the problem is that he doesn't really believe anything that Joe tells him. And Joe says, it's going to be very difficult for you, man, in this, a man with no faith.
The man in your position who's made the choice. And he said, he says, like,
choices you have.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if I believe it. I need to know what it means. To know this, you have to believe in it.
Yes.
Which is, it's very much something where, it's not like you get in a lot of, sort of probably Western, a lot of movies of this type where you'd expect to say, I don't care if he believes this shit or I don't care. It's obviously complete bollocks, but we're just going to, what's he think he's trying to do? You'd still be seeing it in terms of psychosis. And it's like, no, this isn't psychosis. What you are dealing with is actual ritual magic, and you need to understand that.
Yes.
Although it's not a sort of big process of spiritual development for Ben, it's more just coming to terms with the fact of, this is what I need to do to actually try and stop the fucker.
And I mean, and again, it's a really fascinating idea, and it's hard to get across that that what the Dust Devil is doing is constantly moving from one type of being to another, but he's freeing himself from that type of being always.
Yeah.
It's like thank God I'm back to the spirit. No, I want to be back in the flesh. Rip, now I'm gonna have to kill like 5 other people to get out of the flesh again. This was great for like 5 seconds.
One of the comparisons with Penda's Fen, which as I said, as we said, was sort of is about how a lot of these things we're supposed to think of as dichotomous aren't dichotomous. That's a false opposition. They're things which are all part of one another. Yeah. And when the sort of the mother and father figures appear to Stephen at the end of Penda's Fen, you identify them as coming from a Gnostic tradition of sort of seeing the flesh, the world of the physical material world, as a prison from which spirit needs to escape. Yes. And that is identified in the worldview of Penda's Fen as wrong, as actual something that's pernicious and needs to be rejected. But if anything, Dust Devil seems to me to be a kind of quite a Gnostic film in its view. I mean, Robert Burke says at one point, there's no good or evil, there's only matter and spirit.
Yes.
Spirit and matter as movement towards the light or away from it.
Yeah, exactly. And the movement towards the light is, into the spirit, is difficult because the further you move towards the light, the more you lose yourself. You lose your sense of self. And then you want to go back to matter, because matter is all about selfishness, literally. It's all about selfishness. It's about your selfish desires. But then
the desire to escape the. I mean, again, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I ever quite got the idea of him being dissatisfied with the spiritual existence. It's more, from what Neiman says, it's more that he's been here for a very long time and he's constantly trying to get back to where he came from.
I don't see that as being antithetical to it being a cyclical thing.
Well, yeah, one of the recurrent images in the film, in fact, is that of a spiral.
Yes.
You see it again and again and again.
Yes, and the spiral goes either way, right? You go out or you go in. And if you think of matter as being in the middle and spirit as being on the outside, then you have the Dust Devil. You absolutely have the Dust Devil.
Yeah, I mean, you also have that thing with his. Of course, there's the thing of his watch as well, which when he first is spinning restlessly, madly forwards until he commits a murder, and then it's back at normal speed, and then at the end of the final confrontation, it's spinning backwards, and he's like, I can't fix this.
Yeah. What's interesting with that is that the inherent problem of the flesh is mortality.
Yeah.
And yes, the Dust Devil is immortal, but at the same time, when he's in the flesh, he can be vulnerable. He can fall in love. He can want to spend more time with people. He understands time. He's stuck inside of time, like his watch. The watch seems to be broken.
Yeah.
It's going backwards. It's going forwards. It's, it's like I look out the window and I see myself waiting by the side of the road. I'm everywhere at once and I'm nowhere at once. And, all of this is the problem of flesh. And these are things that I take it don't really occur to you when you're sous pois, when you're, outside and you're just blowing around, up above the world. But then the minute you get back in, you're like, fuck, I forgot about that part.
One of the themes that seems to to me to be quite strong in the film, and maybe this is a big part of why it's happening in the 90s because the 90s was that kind of strange decade where, between the end of the Cold War and those kind of big global spanning conflicts, and then suddenly it was kind of like, well, where's the good and evil conflict? Where's the structure? What people were calling it the end of history. What happens now?
That's right. People start to rev up with millennialism. They start to really rev up with the idea that, the world is coming to an end. The century is coming to an end. The 1,000 years are over.
And it was also kind of the idea that it's the triumph of capitalism, the triumph of the Western system, and so and one of the things that came very apparent.
The internet.
Yes, you see it a lot in the music in so many bands, bands like Nirvana, Marilyn Manson. These, you're in the most materially happy.
Nine Inch Nails.
Yeah, you're in this incredibly,
the downward spiral.
Yeah, you're in this totally materially successful place. You should in theory be fine, and yet there's this constant kind of
anxiety, building anxiety underneath it,
and sense of emptiness, and sense of something missing, and sense of the order being corrupt. And a lot of it seems it is that search for and failure to find meaning within the material world, be it in relationships, be it in politics and careers. The only meaningful quest in the world of Dust Devil is for the realm, is towards the spiritual movement, towards the light, which is why his prey are the faithless and the weak, the legitimate because they're lost causes. He says, look at you, and I see a spark of light. And it says, you've got the spark of the divine in you, and you're clearly not going to fucking do anything with it. Yeah. So I'll make use of it if you're not going to.
A spark of light inside of you, and all I have to do is make a little cut, a little incision, and let it out.
I'm the midwife.
I'm a midwife. Yes, absolutely. And but again, he's lying because he's a trickster. So what he's midwifing is himself.
Yes.
Out of the world. And then back into the world, one way or the other. Every time he does this, somebody dies, not just 5 people to get him out of the flesh, but also the flesh of the person that he's been for so long, but that person died when he jumped down into that person.
Yes.
I would have loved to have seen, I would have loved to have seen some indication of who that person was, because I don't think that body is assembled. I think it is an actual person
who maybe killed an earlier incarnation of the Dust Devil somehow.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah, every time he jumps, I mean, poor Wendy. I guess maybe she got to see the sea. That would be good. But
yes, although you get the impression he's never going to go there, because I mean, a dust devil isn't really going to have much fun when there's lots of water around.
No, exactly. No, I mean, like when Wendy got pushed out of her body, maybe, there's a trace element of Wendy left, the same way that there's a trace element of Hitch left.
Yes.
Whoever Hitch was. Maybe he was a mercenary, maybe he was an American soldier, maybe he was, whatever.
And our deep dive into Richard Stanley's Dust Devil continues at the same time next week.
This episode of No Darkness But Ours was made possible through generous donations from subscribers like you. If you enjoyed this episode, tell all your friends and let us know in the comments. Let us know too if there's anything you'd really like to hear us talking about in the future, and we'll be back with more at the same time next week.
So, this has been No Darkness But Ours. I remain Gemma Files. And
I think I'm still Simon Bestwick, but yes, this was quite definitely No Darkness.
No Darkness But Ours.